They say the bells of Sainte rang only once that year. The village of tucked in the folds of eastern France near the Black Forest was not a place of miracles. It was a place of mud and stone, superstition and silence. But in the spring of 1642, the abbess of Sainte-Léonie made a proclamation that split the village in two, that God had chosen 11 children, all between the ages of 6 and 10, to undergo the sacred fast. They were to be locked inside the chapel for 40 days. No food, no light, only prayer. The abbess claimed it was not punishment, but purity, that through denial their souls would shine brighter than any saints. But on the morning of the equinox, the iron doors of the chapel were closed and barred, and 11 names were read aloud into the wind. The villagers were told to rejoice. The fast had begun. That if they endured, they would never be hungry again. A signal that prayers were being said. That the children still lived. On the 7th day, no bell rang. The parents, some trembling, some zealous, agreed. Some say coin changed hands, some say threats did. Her niece, Colette, had been one of the 11. A girl with eyes like green glass and a voice too soft for wind. She stormed into the convent at dawn, pale with fear and fury, and demanded the keys. For the first few days, the bells rang daily at sunset. The abbess claimed it was part of the ritual. "They are deep in sanctification," she whispered, "closer now to heaven than to flesh." By the 14th day, the villagers stopped asking questions. But when the hinges finally groaned open, they expected rot. They expected bones. Instead, they found stillness. Mothers wept. Fathers shouted their names. By the 40th, the chapel had fallen silent, whispering in unison. Their faces were serene, their hands folded, not a single hair out of place, and most terribly not a single sign of aging. It was the mayor's wife who demanded the doors be opened. The abbess refused. So the villagers broke the doors. It took 5 men and 3 hours to crack the iron. No bodies, no blood, no cries, only the 11 children kneeling in a perfect circle, eyes closed, lips moving, not a bruise, not a breath, not a blink. They had not eaten. They had not drank. They had not moved, but they had not died. The villagers rushed to them, but the children did not wake. The only sound was their whispering one word again and again in a tongue no one recognized. Then, as the sun broke through the stained glass above the altar, one of the children opened her eyes and smiled. She was the youngest, 8 years old, maybe less. Her name, someone whispered, was Lise, but when she opened her eyes that morning inside the chapel, no one called to her, no one dared. The moment her eyes opened, the other children stopped whispering, as if some invisible curtain had dropped between breath and sound. She stood slowly, knees unbending like a puppet pulled by a gentle hand, and she turned to face the altar. Because it wasn't just the smile, it was the silence that came with it. Only then did she speak. One word, and no one heard it. They saw her lips move, felt the cold in their chest, but no sound emerged. It's not to ears, not to wind. And yet, birds fell silent outside. The fire in the sconces withered. A woman fainted. Lise reached out and touched the old wooden crucifix mounted above the altar. The moment her fingers met the base, the wood blackened. "It worked," she murmured. "The Lord has returned." The air thickened, and the other 10 children rose as one. None opened their eyes, none spoke. But their feet moved, bare and soundless, as they circled around her. 11 children, skin untouched by time. Standing in the same robes they'd entered 40 days prior, the abbess, trembling near the doorway, fell to her knees, as if the chapel's air held them together and the world beyond threatened to pull them apart. The mayor's wife screamed. No one moved to stop the children as they stepped down the nave. Not walking, not quite gliding, toward the door. But the moment they crossed the threshold, they stopped. Lise turned back and stared at the stained glass window above the altar. The sun bled through it in pale crimson hues, casting red across her face. She whispered once more. This time the villagers heard it, not in their ears. No one stood watch. No one dared. But behind their eyes, frozen like marble, a doctor from a nearby town was summoned. Found heartbeats, breath, but no reaction, no reflex. We are still fasting. And then all 11 children crumpled. Not dead, yet not asleep, but locked inside themselves, unmoving. A new panic took root. Mothers tried to shake them, reciting psalms. Their bodies are alive, he said, but their minds are listening to something we can't hear. That night, the chapel was locked again, not by faith, but by fear. They laid the children in a single room, each on a straw mat, surrounded by candles. And the next morning, the whispers began again. They came not from mouths, the whispers, that is. By the third night, it was clear the children were not speaking. Their lips did not move. Their chests did not rise in rhythm. Still, when the villagers walked past the chapel, they heard it. Ow! Through stone, through soil, through skin. A voice. 11, maybe? 1? The sound of wind through hollowed wood. It's a feeling of being watched by something too large to still, murmuring not words but impressions. The children remained unmoving, save for the youngest, Lise, whose fingers began twitching just after midnight each day. Not spasms, not seizures, dreams of famine, smell of earth. Inside the chapel, the air thickened with waxen winter. Movements, intentional, slow, and deliberate, as if drawing invisible symbols into the air. The village priest, Father Benut, was the first to break. He entered the chapel on the 6th day since the children collapsed, holding nothing but a censer and a cracked leather Bible. The next morning, he was gone. Not a note, not a sound, just his censer, swinging gently from the rope, as if recently released. He read aloud the book of Job. Halfway through, he fell to his knees, like smoke that refused to rise, or breath that had learned to take form. They are not speaking to us, he cried. We were never the audience. That night, Father Benut locked himself in the bell tower. Inside the chapel, the children were no longer lying down. They were kneeling, eyes still shut, lips still sealed. But now their hands were joined. Between their palms, something shimmered, shape. Faint, the midwife who entered to check their pulses screamed when she saw it. They claimed they weren't hungry anymore. She said the children were holding a hunger. Not food, not lack, but a hunger shaped like language. That afternoon, 2 boys in the village stopped eating. By nightfall, 5 more children had joined them. Then a newborn refused to cry. The next morning, the mayor's wife lit a candle for her niece, Colette. It burned blue. That same hour, every church bell within 20 kilometers rang once. With no hands to strike them, people began to flee, not out of madness, but reverence. Because somehow they all understood the same thing. The fast had never ended. And now, it was theirs to keep. Winter came early that year, fell into frost before the leaves could finish dying. Those who remained in the village did so, not out of bravery, but inertia. Something held them like roots through bone. The chapel was sealed with bricks and lime, its windows boarded from within. But still people heard the sound, not chanting, not weeping. Repeated not musical, but bodily, like breath, like a heartbeat that no longer needed blood. A rhythm, 3 notes. The hunger spread without mouths. It crept from house to house, not asking permission. Children who once begged for bread now sat in silence, hands folded, as if remembering a promise made before they were born. They didn't speak, they didn't eat, but they didn't die either. They fasted. And still, they smiled. The doctor who returned from Lyon found 17 cases of complete physiological dormancy without necrosis. He wrote in his report, "These children are neither ill nor alive in the conventional sense. Their cells divide. Their hearts beat, but they do not consume. It's as if something else is sustaining them. Something old has remembered how to feed without flesh." He didn't stay the night. No one did anymore, except the children in the chapel. still 11, still unaging. And one morning, they weren't alone. The abbess, silent since the breaking of the door, was found kneeling in the center of the chapel's nave, head bowed, lips moving, round her neck, the rosary of Sainte-Léonie. But its beads had changed. Each bead was a tooth. Small, childlike, polished, smooth. When the villagers gathered outside, too afraid to enter, a sound rose from within the chapel. A passage below the altar, never carved by hands, but remembered by the stones. Footsteps, but not toward the door, away from it, deeper, as if the floor had opened into something older. The whisper returned. Louder now, not through ears, but bone. Not 11 voices, but one. We remember what it is to hunger. We remember the quiet. We remember the first fast. Before light, before breath, before God spoke, and we never broke it. That night, the chapel burned. No one saw who lit it. No one saw what escaped. Because as the flames rose, no bodies were found. No bones, no altar, only ash. And in that ash, buried near the center, was the shape of 2 small feet, facing downward, as if the child had walked into the fire smiling, as if the vow had been accepted, as if hunger had finally become holy.